but it's still spinning. Says not yet. Oh, it's live. Okay. Man, YouTube, Facebook, broken for this family. Thank you for your patience. You can tell. I knew this is. I was trying to get on StreamYard earlier, John, and it was giving me all kinds of fits. Uh, Google was having an outage all over the world today. Of course, while we're trying to have this conversation. So,
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we got it all sorted out. Welcome to those of you who are watching on YouTube and on Facebook. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat while I'm here. Ashley will probably keep more of an eye on it than I do. And
I was Ashley sitting over there participating.
She's upstairs moderating, I think. So she'll be keeping an eye on the chat, texting me if stuff comes up.
You know me, Dave. I'd rather talk to Ashley.
Me too, John. So this is Broken for This, guys. This is the channel where we share, where I've put together to share with people my own story, but not just me. I want to share the important people in my life and share people who have some worthwhile insight to share with you. The whole goal of Broken for This is helping you see how the most difficult parts of your life can prepare you to be the most impactful in your life going forward. You don't have to be defined by the things that made you feel broken. Those can be the things that equip you. So that's what we want to talk about. And today I've got my best friend, my good brother, Jon Nelson, who I have known. We've known each other since like 2009, and like met each other, and it was just like, oh yeah, you're my brother. Yeah, that's just how that's gonna be. Yeah. So how about, Jon? How about you just kind of tell us who you are? Tell us who's Jon Nelson. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I always start that, hey, tell us about yourself, with I'm the son of a t-shirt salesman, right? I don't know how I got here. So that's literally my backstory, right? I don't have that. What do the kids say now? I don't really have that main character energy.
NPC.
yeah. Son of a shopkeeper,
I like it.
I wasn't even like, the main character didn't even talk to me. I was just in the background. I grew up in Northern California, working with my parents at their small business, for lots of different reasons that didn't work out well. Found my way into the Air Force after failing out of college. Well, I wouldn't say failing out of college. You got to go in order to fail out. So after not going to college, ended up in the Air Force, which, surprisingly is college. Went to Air Force basic training, 1998, right? Seems like a long time ago now. Pre 9/11. So there was no real wars going on. Like, it was just a job, just going for a job. And then, ended up getting married pretty young by today's standards. I was 21 years old. Anna was 20 when we got married. Had kids right away. Now the kids are all grown, and we're like on the verge of being empty nesters in our 40s, and everybody's like, wow, that's so young. Like, you're retired.
That's so cool.
And like, no, I'm not retired. I'm just like, I'm moving through different phases of life, and my kids are grown up, which is pretty awesome. They all live at home. So I spent 20 years in the Air Force, a bunch of those years with Dave, doing stuff and things, running around all over the place, doing good work. Sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes throughout the day. Right. Then I retired in 2019. Took my first post-military job, just like a lot of people, was like, nope, this isn't my job. I need something else. Ended up going back to school, studying clinical mental health counseling, and Now I'm a mental health counselor, in addition to a bunch of other jobs that I have. Because
I know I
Dave,
got your
you know
bio in
this
the
about me. I got
description.
the itch. I got a bunch of stuff that I do, and I can never give any of it up. Like still dabbling in everything. So I teach at the Citadel. I'm a mental health counselor. I do some nonprofit work. Got kids that I'm raising, stuff that I'm doing, writing books, running a blog, doing all kinds of stuff. Having a good time.
Awesome. Awesome. John and I met, if you don't know me or know John, we were both OSI agents. I was brand new out of the academy. I hadn't been at Charleston very long, and things at our unit were crazy. And everybody told me, well, when John Nelson gets here, everything's going to smooth out.
Yeah,
And you
because
were
I had
like
been in
this.
like 5 minutes longer than you.
You were like this. You were this kind of like messiah figure that was off in the desert somewhere, and everybody
Yeah,
was like, "Oh man, but don't worry. When John gets here, everything's gonna be all right." So I
just
remember
hold it
that was like
down.
my bro. I was like, that's how I felt as I heard about you before I met you. I was like, okay, everybody says this dude's gonna bring some whatever, and things were crazy. But I have to say, meeting you in the midst of all of that, that you were a lifesaver in that situation. And everybody was absolutely right. Everything didn't get fixed, but things became much more bearable when you showed up. Um, John and I were both OSI agents stationed at Charleston Air Force Base. Now it's Joint Base Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we worked some together in criminal investigations and some in counterintelligence. And so we joked, we talk about it all the time that our friendship was forged in some of the most difficult circumstances imaginable. We had our own personal challenges going on. I know I certainly did. And then we had a lot of professional challenges going on. The job of an agent was one that really, I joked that like being in maintenance broke my body, being at OSI broke my mind.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. That's
stretching
true.
around inside of helicopters,
Yeah,
messed my body up in some ways. But OSI was really a head trip. And if you don't know OSI, guys, it is NCIS for the Air Force. That's probably your TV analog, minus the
yeah, yeah,
Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? Uh, and so we did a lot of we like John. We say it all the time. A lot of things and stuff. But we saw a lot of people at their worst. That was kind of our everyday
yeah,
thing. Most days we were meeting someone who was having the worst day of their life. We were the, we were the people who brought the calming force, the people who brought the law and order. We were the face of the military justice system for a lot of people, for better or for worse. So,
yeah. Most of the
I've
time for
really,
better. Yeah,
yeah, I would say so. I would say so. And, that I've heard it called trauma bonding. I think that's a pretty fair
yeah,
depiction of
yeah,
if you've been in the military or been in any high stress job, you learn that you either find ways to hate people's guts or really become very close to people. And I'm really grateful that John and I have we forged a strong bond, brotherhood, friendship then that has lasted the last almost 20 years. So I was so excited to get him here to kind of talk about his own life experiences and his journey to being a mental health counselor. Because I'm telling you, that's such a beautiful thing. So tell me a little bit about what we breezed through your military career very quickly.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's in the past. This
but
word probably needs to stay
yeah, that's
most of the
back
time.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
But tell me a little bit about kind of as you look back on it, how do you see the trajectory of your professional life? How did you go from son of a t-shirt salesman to a
Yeah.
maintainer to a federal agent, and now you're a professor and a mental health counselor? How did that come together for you?
Just saying yes a lot, I guess. when
Mm-hmm.
when things showed up and opportunities came, it's like, yeah, I'll give that a try. Let's see. there's man, David, I don't know how to answer that question, man.
Okay, so
there's
here's okay.
there
So let me laser it in then. All right. So
yeah,
you and I
yeah,
both started. We both started as pointy head avionics guys,
yeah,
both
yeah,
working on aircraft. What made you want to go from that job into being an OSI agent?
yeah. Good question. I was tricked, right? Um, I, I mean, I love the work that I did in OSI. I love the people I met, love the work that I did, but I really was tricked. Um, it
Hmm.
was so I was working little bit of backstory for context and aircraft maintenance. Um, uh, Dave was a helicopter guy, right? So
Yep.
well, I was a heavy airlift guy. A little bit of rivalry there, but at least the two of us could get along when we start talking about avionics on heavies and helicopters versus avionics on fighters, right? Totally different worlds, right? So there's rivalry and there's a little bit of good natured digging at each other. But when I moved to Edwards Air Force Base from Elmendorf, Alaska, where I was in probably one of the coolest squadrons left in the Air Force. It was a flying squadron that still had embedded maintenance. So it was like World War II style, like the maintainers and the operators were all in one unit, and that was pretty cool. At the
Those units were
time,
cool.
man, the commander knew to take care of you because he was like the lead pilot for the
Right.
unit, and he knew that the lifeblood of that unit was the maintenance teams,
Hmm.
keeping the airplanes in the air. So that was a great assignment. I always tell people I never would have been an OSI agent if I could have just stayed in that squadron and that kind of team mentality of it really was like being in a pit crew. Like our job is to
Mm.
fly as many lines as we can, do as many missions as we can, and we're going to work hard, and then we're going to play hard. And it was a good time. Spent months flying around Japan, Thailand. Got to go to all kinds of little hidey holes out in the Pacific, like Kwajalein Atoll. Like most people,
Mm.
like I'll tell you, it's in the Pacific. Good luck. The Pacific's a good spot, or it's a pretty big spot, pretty big place, and that's a tiny little runway. So if you can
Yeah.
find it without googling it, it's pretty cool. Um, so I left that environment and went down to Edwards Air Force Base. And Edwards Air Force Base is Flight Test Center, Air Force Material Command,
That's
and
in
I got put
California,
in,
right?
yeah, Southern California, Mojave Desert, the western side of the Nevada Test Range. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that goes on down there. And I was a heavy aircraft maintainer at a base where they were at the time they were developing and testing the F-22, awesome airplane, right? I got to work on the old airplanes that were supporting that. So I had a KC-135 that was from 1947. That was one of our jets. Um, just old airplane. I actually put that thing in hangar queen status for like 3 weeks and had to go talk to the
Mm.
colonel about why I couldn't fix the airplane because it's old. Every time I touch it, it would break. And then we also had the first C-17 that was ever built, T1. It's retired now. And we did tech data verification and installed new systems and mods and all this stuff on that plane. And then we had another KC-135 that was rigged instead of for passing gas to another airplane, aerial refuel fuel, it would spray water like a giant sprinkler to test anti-icing systems on airplanes. So imagine being a test pilot and your job was to go turn your airplane into an ice cube and test the anti-icing systems. So like I
That's
went
pretty
from
different, John.
yeah, I went from a tactical airlift mission where, post 9/11, we're taking Marines in and out of deployments in the Philippines for part of
Hmm.
the post 9/11 war that a lot of people don't know about or talk
Yep.
about, hunt for terrorists down in the Philippines. Went from doing that to who knows? Like
Whatever.
I don't want to put a label on it. It wasn't fun. But here's getting back to the fighter squadron. So we had those 3 airplanes, and then the rest of the airplanes in the squadron were F-16s and F-15s that were used for safety chase for the flight test center. And I was just the dude assigned to the squadron, not having a good time. It was hot, like not enjoying being a mechanic anymore. No longer, I was a flying crew chief when I was as an avionics troop. It's pretty neat to be able to be all systems
Yeah, that's
qualified
a
to be a
big
flying
deal.
crew chief. I was getting to do that up in Alaska, and at Edwards, it was like there was no possibility for that. We didn't do that. No TDYs, no fun missions. They did send me to Iraq to go support deployment of Little Rock maintainers that were just going back to back to back. So I got to go to Iraq as a C-130 mechanic and go help out over there. But I went into roll call one day, and man, the flight chief was like, "Hey, Air Force Office of Special Investigations is having a recruiting brief at the education office. If you don't want to go out to the flight line, you can go over there." And I was like, "Yep, that's what I want to do." Like, I'm not going to the flight line today. I'm going to this recruiting briefing. So kind of for context, at the time I was thinking about getting out of the Air Force. I was up on my enlistment was coming up. I was at that point where it was time to decide, okay, am I going to make a career out of this? I was on a 6-year initial contract. So I'm a staff sergeant. I got one kid, another kid on the way. Got a deployment to Iraq, like right in front of me. Like, I'm getting ready to go. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I go to this recruiting briefing, and man, I got hooked. They set that hook. They got me. And I look back on it, and it's like the psychology of what they did in hindsight was so interesting. Like, just like, hey, here's this really neat, interesting job. It's real high speed. It's tactical. It's like that recruiting video, man. Like, get you going. And then they gave you tests, and there was about 30 people. I think there was about 30 people in the briefing, and they give you this first round of tests, and then you pass. If you pass the test, you get to stay. And I got to stay, and about half the people had to go. And then they made you do a writing sample, and they did the same thing. Like, write out, handwrite autobiography. Tell us about yourself and why you want to be an OSI agent. And look, David, I didn't know I wanted
I
to be
didn't
an
want to go to
OSI
work today.
about 15 minutes ago, and I just wrote that. That's what I wrote. Hey, I didn't even know what OSI was until I came in here this morning. Like, never even heard of you. I thought you guys were the one that ran the snitches in the dorms. Like, didn't know you had any other mission. So anyway, that turned into a job interview. That what I really appreciated about OSI was the people, though, because I went to about 3 weeks after my job interview, I went to Iraq. And the detachment, even I wasn't even picked up as an agent yet, or an agent trainee, or even I was just an applicant. And the members of the detachment took better care of my family than the squadron that I was assigned to. Like, they were looking out. They really were looking out for me from the get-go. And the whole time I was in, at the people level, like, the people that I met were some of the best human beings on the planet. So that's how I got my start, federal law enforcement. Yeah, I was tricked, right? Like, I didn't, like, the Air Force tricked me. They told me I had to go down to Edwards, and I wasn't doing the job I thought I was signed up for anymore, man. And I went to this briefing to just get away from it for a day, and I was young and naive, and I signed the paperwork, and that's how I ended up in Air Force OSI. Now, I'm glad I went there, though, because I don't think I would have become a mental health professional. Maybe, I don't know. A lot of roads to get to different places. But while I was serving in Air Force OSI, I had a lot of really interesting opportunities to dabble in psychology. Right, like, right away, right away when you do your initial training, the behavioral sciences division at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, like they start teaching you how to interact with people. And a lot of
Right.
that, like I was like, oh, I get this. This is just customer service. This is just sitting at the counter with my dad at the shirt tree, talking to people, figuring out what they need, even when they don't know how to articulate it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, so a lot of my interviewing skills, my communication skills, they all kind of started there. And that's why I love to say it's son of a t-shirt salesman, right? Because really what I'm saying is I'm a salesman, right? I'm a
Mm-hmm.
communicator. Like
Yeah.
it's what I do. So yeah, being able to get into the behavioral sciences from an interviewing and elicitation and solicitation standpoint as a law enforcement officer, and working in counterintelligence, it was really really neat. And then I was able to go to the National Intelligence University where I studied the human capacity to detect interpersonal deception, like the human lie detector, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not saying that I am a human lie detector. I'm saying I studied it, and what I found was a lot of the things that we learn and that we teach and kind of pass around, like none of that works. Like blink rate and looking left and looking right and baseline
Right.
patterns of behavior and all this stuff. Like it's all, yeah, yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like it's not really the thing. Turns out, like if I just had to summarize my research from the National Intelligence University, um, you get good at detecting lies when people lie to you a lot. Like you develop an intuition for it, and I've always
Yeah.
kind of looked at that, like, well, how do you train and educate intuition? Which it's always kind of been at the back of my mind, the back of the work that I'm doing, whether it's handling informants or talking to witnesses or subjects or trying to convince somebody that this threat that I'm telling you about is a real threat, not a pretend threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, so being able to talk about those things, that human capacity for deception and breaking deception has always been at the back of my mind. And then as I uh, came into the mental health profession, like I really started to get interested in cognitive science, um, neuroscience, like what's actually going on in the brain. Found out about wisdom rituals and how to educate and train intuition for like behavioral responses that are helpful versus harmful. Yeah, and just like my whole kind of the whole progress of my life to this point has been like, hey, how does the brain and how does the brain work? How does the body work? How does that inform our decision making? Like all of that is deeply relevant to the work that I've done and the work that I'm now doing. Now, how did I
Man.
become a therapist? Right.
Well, let me pause
So
there. Let me pause
okay.
before you get to
Yeah.
therapy.
Yep.
So, as you're talking through all of that, it's like old school, reel to reel going through my head of just
Yeah. Yeah.
flashpoints where I can identify with what you're saying. But if someone who's not familiar with that level of function, I can just say that having been outside of that world for a while, it's crazy to think that so much of our lives were about constantly analyzing, and it's even in cases expecting that people are going to be lying to you, and
Yeah.
knowing that you're surrounded by people uh, who to some of them are spies, felons, and terrorists, which was what we did. Um, and one of the things that always struck me about you was not just that you were very capable, but that you didn't lose sight of the person. And a lot of agents did.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
agents who we know were decently good at their job, but one of the things that would get in their way was that it was just a job, and they were just kind of numbers on the screen or faces in mugshots, and that was never something that I saw in you, even when I first met you, and then meeting your family. Definitely seeing that one of the things that helped me as a new agent was seeing the human side of you outside of the professional and academic side of you. So can you talk a little bit about how did you build up that kind of resilience, and how did you hold all, because everything you're saying that goes through in the flash of a conversation is there are any number of times I can think of things that I've cried about for hours, as I've processed it in therapy. So how did you take all of that enthusiasm, that hunger for knowledge, that drive to do that, but then you got to go home and be a good husband, you got to go home and be a good father to your 3 kids, and you got to figure out how you're going to lay your head down on your pillow and sleep. So can you talk about kind of who's Jon when Special Agent Nelson was this high performing 100 miles an hour, saying yes a lot, doing all the things? Tell me a little bit about the personal side of that.
Yeah, it never worked well. it was always those elements, those aspects were always in deep tension with each other, right? So as an example, think like Carl Jung. Like, how did Carl Jung, the shadow self and the self, and how do you integrate those things? I'll tell you a story about integration while you're on the spot living it, right? So it was 2015 ish. I was stationed in Germany. There's a couple of little terrorist attacks going on in Paris.
Yeah,
pretty high stakes, high energy.
Charlie Hebdo going on, not a big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. I was just doing, like, I wasn't directly involved. I had a role that I played. My team and I played, and did some, did what I had to do. But it was some long days, right? And those long days piled up, and one of those long days happened to be Halloween. And I come walking out of my office, hadn't seen the sunlight probably 2 or 3 days, and I got to go meet the kids for trick-or-treating in base housing. And I'm wearing a suit, and I'm like, oh, the kids, going to dress up for Halloween. I'm not even prepared for dressing up for Halloween. So I'm not even kidding, David. I loosened my tie, and my kids were like, Papa, what are you doing? Like, what are you going to dress up as? And I was like, look, I'm a cop who's seen too much and is operating outside the law. I wasn't operating outside the law, but that was my character, right? So just kind of integrating, like, hey, I've got all this nonsense, all this crazy, just life going on, work going on, and I've got to find a way to engage with these kids for this moment that I have to engage with them. And you just find a way to do it. Like, you just gotta do it, I guess. Now look, I didn't have the best coping mechanisms back then. We could talk about alcoholism, we could talk about nicotine, we could talk about panic attacks. I was in the hospital twice for panic attacks. Like,
and Jon and I, Jon, we talked about that. We did talk about that. The military in general, for the uninitiated, the military, there is a not so quiet culture of functional alcoholism in the military.
Yeah.
It's just a part of the culture. I remember my first squadron picnic in Okinawa, and all the people who were like high speed, getting it done, were 2 sheets to the wind, half an hour into the picnic. And I was like, never been around people who drank like that. And I was just, but I quickly fell in, and then to get into OSI, where, because, in maintenance, a lot of times what you're doing day in and day out is you're kind of, you're LARPing, you're preparing for the actual mission that you're going to do. You're going through these fake scenarios, and you're running really fast to get ready for the deployment or the TDY or the rescue or the whatever. Well, at OSI, most of the time, what you were doing was for real. And I found that compared to maintenance, OSI folks drank even more. There was even more alcohol abuse. There was even more because the stress level was so much higher.
Well,
So
yeah, yeah. And it's like you said, it's almost like it's just issued as part of the culture. Like,
yeah, yeah.
and
So I remember I can think a lot of those flashbulb memories I have are being at your house, drunk on your couch with with one of your kids waking me up in the morning to have some waffles. And I look back on those. You talk about unhealthy coping mechanisms. Yeah, we had
yeah,
them. We really did.
yeah,
And I think that, that we didn't know what we didn't know. The Air Force, the military in general, prepares you to do a mission and doesn't really prepare you for home life.
yeah.
They tell you to
Well,
kind
that's
of
not.
keep it together. Don't let your home life jack up your professional life. But that's about all you get from them.
Yeah, and they'll let you know when you've messed it up.
Right. If they'll
Yeah,
let you know if you've done something,
yeah.
can't be undone. It's storming outside, so I got a dog in my lap. There's Akira.
Okay.
He might make a cameo. But
Yeah.
so
So
then
it.
so how did kind of the personal side talk about you talked about it a little bit, and you and I also had some very similar experiences with post-traumatic stress that we did
Yeah.
that we kind of caught on the backside of it. Because when you're in the middle of doing a crazy job that not a lot of people do, and it's high speed, go, 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 you don't have a lot of time to process that this is hurting me, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
my backpack is full and I'm getting ready to have a breakdown.
Yeah. And the story that comes to mind is like it's it's totally commonplace in circles like ours to be like, "Hey, you having a bad day? Nobody's shooting at you, right? Like, you'll be okay. Okay, yeah, nobody's shooting at us. We'll be okay."
Right.
Um, the what when I started to realize that that's not normal to to use being shot at as your I don't know, your red line for stress. When I said that at work, and I had somebody was like, "There's worse things than being shot at," and I was like, "Wait, no, like you obviously are not a good person. You don't know what it's like to be shot at." And I got super judgy about it, and I was like, "Wait, what's going on with me?" Where I'm like I'm measuring somebody else's stress response based on the traumatic experiences that I had. Like, why are you freaking out? Nobody's shooting at us. Well, obviously you don't get it because you've never been shot at. Maybe you should be shot at in order to understand this. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, there's like that doesn't the math on that
Why
isn't
am I
right. Like,
like
I need
this?
yeah. Well, I need to figure out what's going on here. Like maybe this isn't the healthiest of responses. And the interesting thing is that was years after I had gone through cognitive processing therapy. Um,
Uh-huh.
I had down regulated my drinking. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't stopped at that point. I am like I'm 2.5 years sober now, so in remission for
Congrats,
two and a half
man.
years.
I'm so
Pretty
proud
cool.
of you.
It's still the urge is still coming. I was looking at a beer last night. Like, ugh, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it'll get you. It'll get you. Um, but yeah, it's like where was I going with that? Like the stress. Like
Mm-hmm. Just like
there's
what's the
there's
human side of all of that professional
yeah.
demand?
Yeah, and there's a lot of to sound a little cliche, there's a lot of dissociative behaviors. Like I'm going to separate
Yes.
myself from my family and just be my work, and I'm going to be my work, and my work is more important. And then, when I get home to the family, I'm gonna I'm gonna disassociate from work, and I'm just going to be with family. That's not how life works. Like,
A
come to
lot of law
realize that.
enforcement and a lot of
Yeah,
military, a lot of law enforcement, a lot of first responders have that same kind of, I would say, delusion where we
yeah,
think
yep,
that I can go
yeah,
and do. I've heard from EMTs. I talked to a social worker who worked on one of the COVID wings up at Emory in Atlanta, and she had like 50 patients who were on ventilators, and she was dealing with their
yeah.
families every day. And in the moment, you think, okay, I'm going to do this thing because I have to. and
Mhm.
I just have to be okay falling apart, or you could be like Akira, you jump up
Oh, heck
in
yeah.
daddy's lap. But
Yeah,
you know,
and the thing about that is you no, like, you don't get to separate that. Like, you
no,
are one mind, you are one body, you are one spirit. Like,
that's right.
those like, it's actually a problem when those things start to actually separate. Like, you wanna be
Yeah.
integrated, and you wanna be able to, uh to regulate your emotions and have tolerance for distress. Um, and you want to be able to develop the capability and capacity to face life's challenges instead of being like, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave my gun and my handcuffs and my cop hat in the car, and I'm going to go
Hmm.
inside and I'm going to be a father. Like, good luck. Good luck with that, because you're not leaving all that shit in the car. Like,
Yeah, but
it's
that's what they
you,
told us at
and you're gonna
work.
take
That's
it
what they told us
inside,
to
and that
do.
yeah, and that didn't work.
So,
It won't work.
so, and
That's a
here's the thing. I
disintegration.
think what's worth mentioning, especially if someone who's watching this is in law enforcement, if there's someone who I know who's still who's in OSI right now, who's in a very high stress job, you know, hear from us, the old crusty veterans, that
Literally the
that will catch
graybeards,
up.
right?
It will catch up to you. It will catch
Yeah,
up to you that you can only put a band-aid on top of an arterial bleed so many times. And I say often that if you don't choose to make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. And
yeah.
Jon and I have had a lot of conversations. He's one of my emergency contacts. When shit hits the fan, I'm like, Jon, hey, everything's gone the way that it's not supposed to go. But I say to those of you who are in those kind of situations, now is the time to make healthier decisions about how you're going to get through whatever this is, because there is going to be a post traumatic life for you, Lord
Yeah, yeah.
willing, and you survive. And what I know that I did is that I just kind of left Ashley, my wife, on autopilot for a lot of the time, and she just kind of managed. And so work got the best of me a lot, and Ashley got kind of what was left over. And sometimes that was all right. Sometimes that was, you know, good memories, but sometimes that was coming home and drinking a bottle of Merlot and
Yeah.
being a heap on the couch. So I encourage folks so if you're in a situation that you're finding yourself with some unhealthy coping mechanisms, you know, you're not the only person going through that, but you also have to take some responsibility and make some choices to
Yeah, yeah.
change the trajectory of your life, because you can't do that forever, and the thing is that your family will see it long before you do. The people who are
And they'll
closest to you
remember
will
it.
see it, and they will, and you don't get to get those. There's a lot of stuff, and it's not all doom and gloom, but
Yeah, yeah.
looking at it in hindsight, there's a lot of conversations that I wish I had had. I wish I had gone to mental health long before 2016 for the first time. A lot of it was, some of it was actual job related, because we were investigating people who worked at mental health, and I was like, I'm not going to go in there and tell them I'm feeling
How
stressed
do
out.
how do I even do that?
I'm the
Like,
police. And then
where
the
do I
other one
go?
was,
Yeah.
and then the military. It was this kind of environment that de-incentivizes you to get mental health care, because they stigmatize you. They're like, oh, do we need to take
Yeah.
your gun? Do we need to keep you from deploying? Are you safe? Can we, so
And the
then how
answer
does
to that
somebody,
might be yes, but
that's okay.
that's okay.
So, so
And
how did you
those
come to
things
that
come
then,
back.
John? So
Yeah.
in a culture and environment that encourages overwork, that rewards hyper performance, knowing, especially if at a lot of functions, they see us all two sheets to the wind, drunk as a skunk, but they know we're going to be at work at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
How did you come? Because it is not that common for people who have seen some of the stuff we've come through to end up as pastor or therapist. That is
Yeah.
not, I would say that is not the common response. So what are some of the things that, as you look back now, that you had in place that helped you to turn some of that into how you're experiencing life in a more full way now?
Sure. So I think the first one was just like that initial deep interest in behavioral sciences, right? That was spurred on by the work that I was doing, the education that I pursued while I was on active duty, right? That was one of them. The second one was being a father, right? Being a father, like that is that's part-time that's full-time counseling work. Like you're raising human beings. And if those
Mm.
human beings, and bless her heart, I'm going to call her out, my youngest, she needed to learn how to regulate her emotions. So what did that mean? That meant that I had to learn how to regulate my emotions in order to teach her how to regulate hers. And so
Mm.
as a parent, now I'm like trying to figure out, okay, well, I've got an amazing child that has a temper like you won't believe. And David, you know that you've seen that temper. She's my fighter, right? But we had to figure out how to help her understand the guardrails for that. And that meant that I had to learn some stuff on my own that I could then pass on to her. And then it's like, oh wait, maybe this mindfulness, there's more to it than uh, than uh, wooden beads and dream catchers. And like there's got to be something else to this. And so I got the bug for the neuroscience behind why this works. And I had some pretty early fits and starts with wanting to write about it as a tool for exploration, like to understand and learn about it. And then a lot of credit goes to those kids for, like, one of my callings in life is to be a father, right? So I had to
Mm.
learn how to be a father, and thankfully I love to learn, and I did that by reading and researching and talking to people, and like looking how other people had failed at it and deciding not to do that, and going out and figuring it out, and then bringing it home and trying to institute new things at the house. Hey, man, we have a family brand. Like we have a motto for our family. Like
Mm.
it's really silly stuff, but it works. It became effective, and I got into that kind of that personal development, personal growth, uh, from the approach of, hey, I need to be able to help my kids do this, right? And then I kind of caught the bug myself. Um, let's
Nice.
see. And then there was this time where I found myself in Georgia, and I was talking about some of the problems that I was having at my squadron, being a leader and just the challenges. And I'm thinking about retiring and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And somebody looked at me and said, man, that's not normal. You should go talk to somebody. And then I said, David, don't talk to me like that. and,
That was,
and
that was, here's one of the things that I notice about you and I notice about me. And I think it's probably true of people in general. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but the last person you think to apply that knowledge to is you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I know that I had already been through a summer of mental health counseling in the inpatient. I had been medically retired because of PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and I was in the throes uh, of what felt like an extended break mentally.
Yeah.
And I
And I'll tell
and
you
you were,
what,
yeah,
like watching from Japan, like watching you go through that, and the thought in my head, like, man, if David's not making it, what the hell's going to happen to me? Right? Like this is the best dude I know. Like, and he's not making it. Like, what is going to happen to this guy? Like, I
and a
might not
lot of
make
those
it.
same experiences we had together.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Like,
so but I think you're right though that it's that having a strong support system and then having people who you're accountable to outside of you and
yeah,
outside of work is one of the keys because that'll keep you that'll keep you wanting to go when you don't feel like going. I
yeah,
would I didn't always I didn't want to go to I didn't want to. I felt like I was okay. I was managing things one bottle of wine at a time. I was, I was. If it got too bad, I was dissociate. You know what I mean? Like, all right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for my family, for Ashley, I really credit her a lot to seeing like, hey, and she even said it. She said this to me, and whew, I didn't hear it until I was inpatient. I called it. I was like, I remember what you said. I'm so sorry. But she said, you were agent of the quarter and you were the super duper Dave at work. And she said, but I never got husband of the quarter to come home.
Mm.
And she's like, I am the one, I'm there for you when people don't see you, weak and feeling broken. And she was like, and that's exhausting. And it never even occurred to me. I got all this insight. I could get anybody to confess anything to me. I was successful in my job in so many different ways. But I realized that I was a public success and a private failure. And so I'm grateful that you and I have both found our way to come out of that cycle of trauma, stuffing it down, numbing it in some way that's just going to make it worse, and then coming through it. So now that you're, so both of us, we retired, we're good old disabled veterans now trying to help people. What was it that made you, after all of that, still want to go out there and involve yourself in people's mess? Because I know as someone in the helping profession, as a pastor, people will still call me when they're in crisis. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It isn't the same. But what is it that made you still want to? Now you've come out of that. You were in a job that's very different than that, but here you are now, mentoring and teaching at the Citadel, and working with veterans with Vantage Point, and now with your own practice in mental health counseling. Tell me about what was the motivating thing what are you doing? What are you doing, man?
I don't know. Good question. I'll let you know when I figure that out. No, the idle hands, right? Like I tried when I left my government job, I was like, hey, look, I need some space to figure this stuff out. Thankfully,
because you went pretty much straight from active duty to government work.
I did. I took a little bit of time off, but
not much.
Not nearly enough. Like the amount of healing and exploring and work that I needed to do. Look, it took me 3 years of grad school studying clinical mental health for me to zero in on what I would call a normalized pattern of behavior that isn't harmful for me.
Wow.
Fair enough. Like isn't harmful.
Yeah.
Now notice I didn't say helpful.
For sure.
Like,
but you're not like actively working against
helpful,
yourself.
But like a lot of the things. Sorry, a lot of things that are like self-sabotaging or like the drinking, like that had to go. Look, that 2.5 years ago was in the middle of grad school, right? Like I had learned enough, and I had gotten to a course on substance abuse and addiction. And one of the things that we had to do was we had to practice abstinence from something during that course. And I had just done a no drinking challenge the month prior, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't drink anymore. and it's easy to say that. It's hard to live that, right? You know.
Mm-hmm.
But where was I going? Like harmful, helpful. So I leave the government in order to go figure out, okay, well, what is it that I want to do, right? And I've always loved teaching. I think you know this about me. Like one of the highlights of my work in the Air Force were the moments where I got to teach somebody how to be a better leader, how to be a better supervisor, how to be a better agent, how to get away with how to overcome a challenge. I almost wanted to say get away with something like P4 Mafia style. Yeah. How to weaponize policy. I used to love doing that. Like, how do you make the policy work for you so you can get the stuff done
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you need
yeah.
to do to win, that kind of thing. But I really love teaching. I really love training. So when I was thinking about leaving government work, I made a phone call to the department head for the Intelligence and Security Studies department at the Citadel, and was like, "Hey, this is who I am. I know I can't be a full-time faculty member because I don't have a PhD. Don't want one, but I've got a master's from NIU, and I've done X amount of years of work in counterintelligence. I'd love to teach. I would like to figure that out." And I got hired to be an adjunct professor. I got to start teaching, and I've always had a history of teaching or instructing at some point. I was a scoutmaster. I taught Sunday school. Um, I was a teacher's assistant in high school. I was a green rope in, in tech school, right? I ran study groups while we were at CITP. Like, there's always this element of I want to learn, I want to teach. I got to
And I
help
would say
develop
this
some of the
about you,
curriculum.
Jon. I'd say this about you, watching you. I think that's probably a through line of purpose for you,
Yeah.
that you that we and that you kind of, that if you just track what you did and what you liked, what you gravitated towards, and purpose is a good word. We talked about advantage point.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of times when you're in the middle of a bunch of traumatic events, that's the last thing on your mind. You're not thinking about the why. You're just getting it done. Or at least you're thinking of the immediate why. I got to get this off my plate because the next thing's going to be coming from who knows where. So then so it sounds a lot like, to me, and from just knowing you and watching you, that through all of that, you did find that through line and find this sense of purpose that some of those experiences showed you. Do you think that's true?
Yeah. The core value for me is purpose, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
that purpose is sometimes helping other people find their purpose, which that's what I get to do at Vantage Point. Um,
Yeah.
and it could be helping people refine their purpose, and that's what I'm doing with my teaching. Like, these students
Mm-hmm.
want to know a thing or two about intelligence and security studies, and I can help refine that and teach it to them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them are going to go be lieutenants, and I have a little pet peeve about lieutenants. Like, they got to be ready to go when they hit the service. So I feel like I get to do that now. Um,
Yeah.
and then it's like that call to teach, or that drive to teach, really is at the core of how I show up as a counselor, right? And as a therapist. I don't like to use the word therapist. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's personal preference, but yeah, that's it's what it is. I develop a therapeutic relationship with somebody, just like you develop a pastoral relationship with somebody. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a
Yep.
specific type of relationship that you build, and at the core of the therapeutic relationship and alliance is, hey, I hear you, I see you, I share with you, right? Um, and what I share is a reflection of what they're sharing with me, and it's access to tools that I know work, right? So I get to bring in well researched, uh, uh, effective tools for distress tolerance, for emotion regulation, for critical
Yeah.
thinking, for dealing with problematic thinking, for approaching trauma, right? Look, I've seen some people approach trauma in ways like we used to do it all the time as cops. When we're interviewing a witness or a victim, man, we would sit with them and we would approach their trauma, and then we would say, "Thank you for that. Could you write it down in the statement?" And then we would hand them off to a victim's advocate. And I never felt worse. Like, those were some of the
Yeah.
worst days, because you knew that you just unstitched a person to the point where who knows what could potentially happen to them. And
And they
and I
told you
knew that I
something that
wanted.
they never wanted to tell anyone in their whole life.
Yeah,
And
no.
in the space of a couple hours, they trust you enough to tell you that. And then you say, We'll probably never talk again, but have a nice rest of your day.
Yeah. And that's a form of vicarious trauma that I didn't
Hmm.
even know. I didn't even know that there were tools for dealing with that. And turns out there are tools for dealing with that, for managing and mitigating the impact of vicarious trauma exposure and traumatic, other people's traumatic material, and how that impacts your life. Turns out that there's help that you could be a great help to somebody with the
Hmm.
right, if you teach and apply the right tools and skill sets, right? So once, as I was going through my education and training as a counselor, man, once I found out what those tools were, I was like, man, this is the secret sauce. Like, this is what I've been looking for. This is it. Like, where was this all my life? Like, and then you can't be like hindsight. Like,
Yeah.
uh, think how great things would have been if I would have had this back then. Well, you know what? You didn't. So what do you do with it
Yeah.
now? Well, now I'm in a really awesome position where I could include some of uh, the tools that are used uh, to mitigate problematic thinking, right? From core cognitive behavioral therapies, I could integrate that into my coursework at the Citadel, where I'm teaching advanced analytical methodologies that deal with critical thinking. And now we could like blend those skills together, because check it out, problematic thinking is the opposite of critical thinking. So
Mm.
if you're teaching the skills for good critical thinking, and you're doing it from a research evidence-based best practice from cognitive behavioral sciences, you're also increasing the resilience to problematic thinking while you're increasing critical thinking. So, like,
Man.
what a sweet spot to be in, where now I've got, and that repeats across a lot of different things that I'm doing. But when you sit down and you think about, okay, well, my job at the Citadel is to prepare principled leaders, right? Um, Principle, like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? What does that mean? I mean a lot of things, right? But what the way I picture that is, I need to build resilient leaders, and I know what resilient means. And resilient means you could tolerate distress, you could regulate
Yep.
your emotions, you could effectively communicate, and you can and when you're doing those things, now you have the, regardless of the mission, you figure the mission out if you could do those other things, right? So that's kind of like
Man.
all of that
Deep,
all of
John.
that hot soup kind of comes, like, it's a great gumbo, right, of
Yeah, 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 yeah.
hot little mess of circumstance to all come together.
Yeah. So, I find that in ministry, especially there, espe- early on, I found that a lot of my experiences were in the way of my progress
Mm-hmm.
because I hadn't dealt with them yet. Now I find that now that I'm in a healthier headspace than I was when I retired in 2018. It's also a long time ago, John. Now I'm noticing that some of those same things, I still have some of those same memories, thoughts, but they are not a detriment to me in the way they are. Can you talk about
Yeah.
kind of that, going from maybe from your viewpoint, some of the things that we talked about earlier about unhealthy coping mechanisms and some of the traumatic things that how do you make sense of not throwing out the baby with the bathwater in terms of, okay, I need some of this stuff that I came through.
Yeah.
It's helpful to me without putting yourself through re-traumatization all the time. How do you,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, it's like, the thought that comes to mind is push-ups, right? Like,
mm-hmm,
nobody likes push-ups. Like, but but if you want to do 100 push-ups, you got to do one push-up, right? So, like, the it's the ability to flex those muscles and
mm-hmm,
do it repeatedly turns it into a strength, right? Like, I could do 100 push-ups. That means that I could probably push this car where it needs to go when it breaks down at
mm-hmm,
the intersection, right?
yeah,
Because now it's more than just my chest muscles, my leg muscle. Like, when you work all those components together, and it turns into a tool now that you could use, because you've trained it, you've recognized the need for it, and you've arranged for it to be accessible, right? It's and look, trauma, stressful events, grief, loss,
Yeah.
disappointment, tragedy, pain, suffering, all of those things could be those are double-sided coins. Like, you could flip it over and
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, I lost my father, right?
Mm-hmm.
My father, he fought non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for years until,
Yeah.
with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's the saying is, it's not the cancer that kills you, it's the treatment. So
Mm-hmm.
you treat until the treatment just overwhelms the system, and then he passed away, right?
Mm-hmm.
That loss, the going through the grief of it, the
Oh,
the
yeah.
challenge of it, everything associated with it, has now become one of the cornerstones for how I engage with and provide uh, grief and loss informed care my for my clinical for my clinical clients. Like, I know to
Beautiful.
some degree what you're going through, because I've been through it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I've been through exactly what you've been through, but I've been through a version of it, and I understand. I understand, like, some of the neuroscience behind it, some of the psychology behind it. And I'm in a position where I've been trained to build a therapeutic relationship with you. So that way I can take my experiences, and instead of saying, hey, look, I've been through this, I know you'll be fine. Like, that, yeah, that doesn't
Super
help. That's a
unhelpful.
problem. It's super unhelpful. But I could say, hey, I've walked this road. I'm here with you. Let's walk. Instead of just staying stuck, let's go for a walk. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. So
So,
so then, John, like, what do you see as what are how why so many people in the military and so many men in general, young men under 40, are at an all-time high for being having mental health crises and committing suicide right now.
yeah,
And at
yeah.
the same time, men in their 40s and under are the least likely to seek mental health counseling. How, tell me about why do you think that is, and what you would say to someone, and perhaps there's somebody watching who's
Yeah.
sitting here and this is hitting on a bunch of tender spots for them, but they're among those people who are like, for whatever reason, they're not. What do you say to that? What have what have you experienced and researched about that? And then what's your answer to someone who maybe is a little reticent but is open to the possibility of getting some help?
Yeah. So, uh, it's too easy to blame stigma. Like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
stigma, it's culture, right?
Yeah.
Uh, like, stigma is the lazy way of saying that we have a culture of not supporting each other as
Yeah.
men. Like, that's what
Yep.
it comes down to. You and I are better men because we support each other. Period. Right.
Yeah.
So, uh, the challenge then becomes, well, how do you find the support that you need? Does that support even need to be, does it need to be a mental health counselor? Does it need to be a therapist? Does it need to be a pastor? Does it look, it's probably going to be a challenge if it's just your drinking buddies, right?
Right.
But I'm not going to knock it, because you and I were drinking buddies before we were this, right?
That's true. We kept each other alive, John.
Yeah. So I'm not here to throw salt or shade on that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to say that there's some work that we could do in that space to make it healthier and more helpful and less risk of harm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what keeps men from going to counseling? So let's just be real honest about it. So I think that there's not enough men in counseling, like, as counselors,
Yeah.
that are just showing up and saying, "Hey, look, uh, I've done the work. I'm a clinical mental health professional. I know the stats. There are not a lot of men that do this. There just aren't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a low percentage. Okay,
Yep.
so now look at what the core component of a therapeutic relationship is uh, the client needs to be able to see themselves in the counselor.
Yep. Yep.
To some degree, like some way, somehow. Like that's how it starts. And look, that doesn't guarantee success, but
Nope.
it like it has to be there to start, right? So we need more men to step up and do this work. Is
Hmm.
what it comes down to. Like, and then I think that's where culture starts to move, is when men realize that this is work that they can do.
Hmm.
It's relationships that they can build in their own unique way, to help. And look, I have male and female clients, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on what they're looking for. Can they find what they're looking for in me, right? And if you look at the demographic, just the basic demographics, the odds of a man being able to get on Psychology Today and find a counselor that they see themselves reflected in, pretty low, pretty
Yep.
low. And then hopefully they have
Unless
availability.
I was gonna say, unless they're a white woman, then it's probably pretty easy.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the truth, man. The other part of it is, especially for the space that you and I like, our space that we care the most about, because it's our lived experience, the veteran space. Like, there's not a lot of veterans that move into this lane either, right?
Hmm.
So if you're, I would say this is a call to action, right? Like, if you're a veteran and you're interested in clinical mental health counseling, the neuroscience of it, the cognitive science of it. I didn't even know cognitive science was its own branch of science until I started
Hmm.
studying this. And it I'll tell you what, if you want to understand artificial intelligence, go learn a little bit about cognitive science, because you'll see that it's not intelligence, it's just predictive processing. We could go down that road
Hmm.
later, but if you're interested in this stuff, and you want to see you have that call to help people, like, this is one of the best ways you could help people. It's being a mental health counselor is akin to being a coach, a teacher, a preacher, a father, a brother, like all of those things all kind of wrapped up into one, but managed, uh, by the history of the profession, right? Like, it is a
Mm.
therapeutic relationship that taps into aspects of all those other characteristics or archetypes that we might carry in our lives. And look, we like men just need to show up for each other. Is what it comes
Yeah.
down to. Like,
Yeah.
there's plenty of ways where we show up for each other individually, but where it counts would it would be in the clinical professions, right?
Hmm. I was listening
Or if
to
you're called to it as a preacher.
yeah, I was listening to Steve Hassan. I don't know if you've listened to him. He's a cult expert, and he talked about how a lot of cults are drawing in a lot of people, especially young men today, because they offer a counterfeit version of that.
Yeah,
Because they offer this kind of exclusive, they offer something that you belong to, they offer this kind of pseudo accountability, but it's set up to, serve one person more than anyone else.
yeah.
I think
That
that really it
charismatic
really
single leader, the high control,
right,
the
and I think we can
rules.
see that in our own. We can see that in our own. It's certainly in American politics. Depending on you pick the person on whatever side you're on. If you're looking at
Yeah,
one person and your belief in that, there's a reason that so many people are willing to get on 4chan and wait for the next Q drop, because they're looking for something that's bigger
yeah,
than them.
yeah,
And I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that drives me, and I know it does you too, but I want to pose it to you, is that part of the reason that I'm doing the series I'm doing with my dad's letters is that I'm doing what's called in the business reparenting. That I am using the benefit of hindsight, and I am speaking to my younger self the words that I needed to hear.
Hmm.
And I hear a lot of that in you as you're talking about some of the stuff you've been through and the things that you didn't have, that you are now providing that to other people. How much of that do you see having some benefit for you as you're doing it? How much do you preach to yourself in those counseling sessions? How often do you find that you're like, "Ooh, that's good for me. Let me tuck that away. I needed what I just
Yeah.
said to them." How much do you see that?
Yeah, one of the here's the secret sauce, right? The secret of the sauce. As a brand new counselor, I have a supervisor, right? And
Yeah.
I met my clinical supervisor, Matt. I met him pretty early in my counselor education because I had to go interview a mental health professional in the local area, and I was like, okay, who is that? Oh, okay, well we have a department of mental health, and this is the clinical director. Let me call that guy. So I called him and was like, hey, I'm a student. I need to interview somebody in the community, and he was like, sure, come on over. So I got to meet him years ago now and develop a rapport and a relationship with him. And we just did it. Today's Thursday, so we just did it last night where I sat down and went client by client, case conceptualization, progress, plan of treatment, plan of care, um, clinical impression, like, and I get to talk all that through with somebody who's got like over 30 years of experience in mental health. And you know what he does? He just nudges that like, huh, like, isn't that interesting? Don't you how, don't you think that's useful for you too? Like, don't we all need to like, and he just does such an amazing job of
You do
of
that too, by the way, John. Every time I talk to you, every time John and I talk, guys, we're just talking
yeah,
now. We do that to each other quite a bit.
yeah,
I noticed that we
yeah.
do that a lot. You do, but that's something that I learned from you from the moment I met you, though. And you're
Yeah,
much
and
more deliberate about it now, I would say. But it's something that, yeah, it's definitely something that I've noticed that you do.
yeah, how's that working out for us?
How's that working? I'm not gonna say what I was. How are you gonna document that, John?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How
But no,
you write that
yeah, I
down,
think
huh?
you,
You gotta document that? That's a good plan. Who's gonna do it? Um,
yeah.
those are a bunch of like a chain of inside jokes from a
Hmm.
trauma bonded history. Okay, so 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 but but to directly answer your question, I don't think I'm very good at that. Like seeing
Mm.
like what I'm telling other people and then doing it myself, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons why I write, because when I
Hmm.
write things, like I'll have an interesting interaction with a student or with a client or with another veteran, and I'm like, oh, hey, something clicked. Let me write about this, and I'll stitch it together for a blog post. I'll make a
Hmm.
meme, but whatever, like whatever, like work with it, play with it, and that helps to start to integrate it into myself. So now,
Yeah.
like one of the things that I picked up pretty early on was this idea of gratitude journaling, right? And it's not because
Hmm.
you want to keep a list of all the things you're grateful for, like yawn. Like I wouldn't want to go read that. Like what I want to do is I want to train the neural circuitry, the capability and capacity to under stress default to gratitude, right? And
Hmm.
if you don't practice gratitude when life gets stressful, you're not going to default to gratitude. Like you're just not
Yep.
going to do it. You're going to default to the other thing you're practicing. And it's like the Buddhists say, what you practice grows stronger. So if you practice being stressed and pissed off and a raging alcoholic and somebody who hates on the world, you know what? When you're stressed out, you're going to be really good at that. You're going to be really
Yep.
good at being an asshole. And I'll tell you,
Yep.
I've been pretty good at being an asshole.
Yeah.
And
Me too.
now I've found some things that I would prefer to have in my life. Like I would prefer when I start to get dysregulated in traffic, like everybody does. I would prefer to take a deep breath in through my nose, hold it in for a second, exhale it through my mouth, because I know that I'm activating my parasympathetic nervous system and I'm tapping my own brake pedal before I start screaming at the people at the intersection. Like I would prefer to default to those behaviors. And I've come to recognize that, hey, if I want to default to those behaviors, I need to be teaching those behaviors to other people, and I need to be practicing them, because even though I love to tell people, when I was a senior NCO in charge of a team, I'd be like, I don't mind being called a hypocrite, just do what I tell you. I know as a mental health professional, I'm not here to be a hypocrite. I'm here to tell you, hey, I know this works. And not only can I cite the science, I can pull the book off the shelf and say, hey, look, Dr. Marshall Linehan did all this work on dialectical behavior therapy, and it's proven for da 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 da. I can say no, like the tip skills work for me, right? Like temperature control, what now I can't even remember them. Temperature, intense exercise, progressive muscle relaxation, and paced breathing. I know those things work for me to get through crisis because I've used them. You know, I'm not a member of the Hair Club for Men, but I am a member of the DBT skills for men. Like these things work.
I think that's a key, that to study those things, though. It really is helpful to be deliberate in the same way that you get adjusted to drinking 12 beers in a sitting. You can get adjusted to breathing and training your brain to deal with things in a healthier way. And the other thing that I think stands out to me is when I'm having a really rough day and I'm having a hard time accessing all of that stuff, Ashley will like walk over to me, or she'll text me from the other room and she'll say, call Jon now.
Occasionally she's
beautiful.
She's texted me and said, call Dave now.
Yeah, because I think that sometimes it's in general, I don't want to say sometimes, but you'll come to periods of your life where you have all the knowledge in the world and you can't do it by yourself. Yeah. And that's why you got to have a support system, because and you got to have some people who you are willing. It doesn't mean everybody, because I think that people that it's a different kind of pathology when you're constantly telling everybody about the worst thing that happened to you and you're overloading perfect strangers with stuff that they're not ready to deal with. Ashley said, I'm just doing my job. but there is real value in having a good trusted inner circle of people who you can be vulnerable with, who you know are going to remind you of the things that you need to hear so you can get yourself regulated again. Because I know in my life, if it's just me, the vicious inner voice that I have, I can convince myself that I am absolutely no good. I'm horrible. It's not worth it. Everybody hates me. Nobody likes me. I guess I'll go eat worms. But if I get on the phone with my brother, who is and sometimes you don't even say anything crazy to me. You just reflect back what I said and tell me how ridiculous it sounds, or you just remind me of those things. And I'm just saying to those of you who are watching, you need some people in your life who you can be real with, who you can kind of fall apart with, and who aren't gonna, slum it up with you as much as they're going to help. And maybe they will a little bit. Maybe they are going to say, hey, let's talk crazy for a little while. But then it's going to say, okay, so now what are we going to do? How am I going to be? How do we get you strong again? Not how do I get you back in the fight like the military did to us all the time, but really like, how do I get you back to what you said earlier, Jon, which is purpose? Because I noticed that when things are really bad for me, I lose sight of the fact that that part of my existence is strengthening other people, teaching other people, mentoring other people. And as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and those kind of things go, that self-actualization is usually the first thing to go when you start finding yourself going crazy. So I just think it's so important that you not only do you have some strong tools and education, but that you got a good, solid friend group. And I tell my church all the time, I wish they called more. But, or the people who are close to me, if I see somebody struggling, one of the things that I think gets in our way is some of that is pride, some of it's embarrassment, some of it, it's shame, guilt, fear of rejection, stuff like that. but you need some folks, not a whole lot, because everybody is, but you do need to be able to no kidding. That's why having a counselor is so important, because you got somebody like Jon who's been through hell and who knows how to help. And you're not going to tell him something. John's going to be like, "Oh, I've totally given up on you. You're a waste of life." And you need to have some people who can
Yeah.
deal with you on those rough days, and it'll help you to see that, yeah, you're still worth that life is still worth living, either even after. How many times, Jon, have we had the worst day of our life, and here we still are?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's part of it is because I got people. I got people that I didn't, yeah, you gotta have that network of folks who are gonna help lift you up when you can't do it for yourself.
Yeah. And they've got to be empowered by your actions to respond in the way that's helpful. Like I'll tell you right now, like having people um and just being an asshole to them like isn't going to help you,
Right.
right?
Or having people that you can call and lie to.
Yeah, yeah. They're just going to
You got to
feed
do
your
it the right
narcissism.
way.
They're just going to
Yeah,
feed
everyone's
they're just
terrible.
gonna
It's
feed your
not me at
demons.
all.
Yeah, yeah,
Ashley's so mean to me. She won't let me drink a bottle of wine. She won't let me
yeah.
go through life. So you
She's
need some
only mean
people
to
who
you when you
can.
deserve it and you know it. And that's how
That's
that
so
works.
true. Yeah.
That's how that works. But there's a
Mhm.
lot to be said for empowering them, but also not abusing the privilege of having that person in your life. But here's the thing, because you hinted at it, like we will hesitate to reach out because we don't want to perceive that we are intruding or we are abusing as a way of stopping
Mhm.
us and keeping us stuck. And that's not helpful.
Yeah.
That's not helping. And you tell me this all the time. Like, why don't you call more? Like, I'm here to help. I love to help. Like, just call more. Like, I, you and I have that. We have a good relationship where it's like, I will answer the phone if I can. There's no other stipulation on it. Like, you
Yeah.
call, you text, I will pick it up if I can.
Yep.
Right. And there's no like, well, maybe I'm so broke right now I can't pick it up. It's just maybe I'm busy, right? And I'll call you
Yeah.
back. Like there, it's going to be there. Now, if you text me 911 call now, I'm going to be like, well, like, here we go. But
We'll make it work.
hey, call me when you got a minute. Hey, checking in.
Yeah.
Like those are some of the most powerful messages that you could send to people, right?
Hmm.
And that kind of gets at another aspect of this that I think is systemic in our culture, and that's acceptance of the loneliness crisis, right? We've just kind of accepted that loneliness is how men are supposed to be. Like we're just going to be lonely, and that's the way it is. Like, and that's like no, you're not designed to be alone. You're
Nobody will
that's
ever
not.
understand me. I am, my trauma is
Yeah,
specific to me, and no one will ever get it.
yeah,
And
you're right. And here's the thing: you're right. Nobody's ever going to get it exactly like you get it, and it is individual to you, and
so,
and you're not designed to handle it alone. Like all of those things are true, and you need to sit down at a campfire, on a couch, on a long car ride, and you just need to be around somebody else, even if you're only like glancing at the trauma and you're not fully approaching it, even if you're just
mhm,
acknowledging that it's there. Hey, I'm having a rough time. Let's go for a drive. I'm having a rough time. Um, I just I need to sit with somebody versus
yeah,
if you want to dive deep, you better make sure that you have the right relationships to do that too.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, man. That's huge. Well, look, we're at an hour 20. I know I've taken up a ton of your time. I appreciate you making so much time for us. What do you have on the in the way of kind of final thoughts? How do you
Final thought.
what do you say to the broken for this crew? I assume that this is people who are in there's some I know that there's some who are in helping professions, there's some
Mhm.
who are struggling in their own things, who are, just what are your kind of turning the most difficult things in your life into something that is useful, not only to you, but to other people.
Yeah. I mean, I like the thought of broken is something that I rebel against. Like, what do you
Mm.
mean broken? Like, I
Hmm.
can do, like, I can do it. Like, you think about all the stuff that we did, um, like running through the mountains of Afghanistan, surviving Iraq, right? Like, I'm not broken, you're broken. Like, like the instinct that we have to resist acknowledging how hard it was and the value of the struggle in helping others prepare to face their struggles, right? That's
Mm.
what like broken, sure. Like you use whatever word you want. Prepared is the
Yeah.
word that I think that comes to mind. Like, you are prepared for this. And if you're not prepared for
Mm.
this, you need to get prepared for this because you have a duty and a responsibility. And that's kind of my thought. Like, and all of that's directed at me. I'm not like talking to the audience like, you better get your shit together, son. Like, we're gonna send you to basic training. We're gonna tear
They're
you down and
going.
build you up. Like, that was
We're
all
gonna be at
directed
your
at
house
me.
in 5 minutes. Throw a bag over your head and take it to us.
The knife hand is out. It's strong. Ask my youngest daughter how driving lessons are going. They're very senior NCO, but it's like the idea of broken. Um, the I like, you and I get it because we were broken down at basic training and rebuilt and prepared for something else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
broken for this implies that you were also prepared for this,
Yeah.
and there's an intention behind that. um, I, I love where your faith comes from. You know me, I believe the universe conspires for us. Like, we are broken, and then we are prepared, and then we are
Mm-hmm.
called. So
Yep.
to answer that call, whatever that call is, don't sit idly by and rest on your broken laurels. Pick them up and go do something with them, and you'll feel way better. Like, you're
Yeah.
meant for action, meant for action. So I
Awesome.
know it works because it's been working for me. Like,
Me too.
when I'm picking up, when I'm acting on what I've been prepared to do, I feel way better. When I'm sitting at home trying not to drink, trying not to get another Zen, like, those are the hard days, right? But when
Yeah.
I'm actively engaged and out there doing what I've been called to do, things are things aren't easy, but they're easier.
And I'll share some links for all of your stuff. You got a
Yeah,
blog, you got Vantage Point that you help out there. Awesome
yeah,
resource for veterans. And then and your own mental health practice. You do a ton
yeah.
of great stuff for people. You're in the field. You're in the middle of it, and I'm so proud of you. So grateful to call you a friend and a brother. And I
Thanks, man.
appreciate your lending your time to these folks. If you're watching and you're finding yourself identifying with this, you need to talk. Maybe you want to connect with Jon. You know, especially if you're in the Charleston area, we can make that happen. If you're in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Southeast and you want to come to a retreat with veterans who are going to help get you in the right direction, get you pointed towards purpose again, let me know. I'll help you get there. I'll set you up. I know a lot of good people, and Jon's one of them. So, Jon, I'll make sure that all of your stuff is available. So if you get
Yeah,
an
yeah.
influx of calls, I'm apologizing in
That's great.
advance.
Happy to help. And if you're outside of the state of, my license is restricted to South Carolina. If you're outside of the state, look, my job is to help, right? So if you're looking for somebody, I'll help you. I'll help you navigate that. I might not be able to be your therapist or your counselor, but I'm going to do my best to help you out.
My guy. Thank you so much,
So,
Jon. And thank you all for watching. Thank you for hanging in there. We had all kind of technological issues, but we made it happen.
yeah,
Love you guys. There's nothing to do with it. Love you, Jon. I appreciate
yeah, I love
you.
you, brother.
You're a blessing in my life, man. You guys have a great rest of your day. See you at the next one. I'll be back tomorrow to read another one of those letters to my dad. I'm gonna put some of the stuff we talked about into practice, doing the hard thing till it becomes easy, huh?
Yeah, that's a heavy lift.
All right.
Proud of you for
Thanks,
doing it.
everybody. Thanks, Jon.